Okay, Assalamu alaikum everyone. We are going to start our reading and study circle. So welcome to Katina and Muna. And as I mentioned last week, we have gone through briefly the Enneagram diagram, those 9 numbers. So mainly what we have discussed was this number 7, which was basically as explained in this introductory page, which says that number 7 is um, basically the movement of change, growth, and restoration to health is indicated by number 7 as the symbol of movement in the universe and renewal within the self. The self, as has been shown, consists of 3 basic psychological systems: is cognitive system, behavior system, and affect. Those 3 systems, and those 3 system is referred to 3 numbers, 3, 6, and 9. And this 7 has these states: 1, 4, 2, and then 8, 5, 7. So it has various side. One is the positive, another is the negative. Positive means over, um, or under. Minus is under. So we will go into more details on all those sort of things later. But number 7 is one of the number which we will be working on. And of course, we will, yeah, she explained many of the other numbers, 9 and how 369 fits together. All those things we have discussed last time, but 369 we will come back to it. So, and then full circle of self-renewal, what we will be um, learning how this particular diagram is applied. But if we wanted to understand, we needed to go into um, this first page structure of the book, the content. So that content is basically, it has an overview. So that's what we will read today. And then it has personality paradigm, and it is divided into this um, 3: structure, topography, structure, and dynamics. How personality paradigm fits in into this kind of structure. And then she has a theory called developmental learning theory, and how evolution and development of the self happens. So she'll give us some lessons, and then we will do our own research about our own self, and then we'll evaluate, and based on that we will apply. And so there are some books related to how to apply it. There is a 2 or 3 handbook, the volume 2 and volume 3. This particular one we are reading is volume 1. So volume 2 has it's the handbook. That's where all divine names, how we apply them, and it has all the abjad description and the table, and then also it has um, the hot, cold, wet, dry, those sort of um, yeah, calculations, depending on how we apply what name to do zikir or wazifa about, and how it affect our physical health, and how it affect our mental health, and how it affect our spiritual development, and how it affect our journey to the universe. Because that's what one of the thing I wanted to touch base is What is the structure of the universe? Cosmology, according to Ibn Arabi. What is the structure of self? How our self looks like. So that's why I shared few diagrams to go through those. So I will be slowly introducing them. So at this stage, um, let's go back to our initial page, which we wanted to start with the overview page. And then as we go into overview, I'll go on the sideways to go into the diagram I shared in the chat, in the our WhatsApp group, and also some of the PDF. If I didn't send before, I'll send it after the session. So can I request Katina for you to start with this introductory page, just to go through the overview, if you like to read, please.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So there's a famous story about a contest that was held between Greek and Chinese artists as to which group had the better artists. Each was given a room which faced each other, separated by a door, so that they could not see each other's work. The Greeks decorated the walls with beautiful flowers using rare colors and techniques. The Chinese, on the other hand, polished the surface of the walls in their room. When the door between them was removed, the beautiful art of the Greeks was reflected on the wall of the Chinese in all of its original beauty and splendor. The Chinese won the contest because their creative solution most clearly represented the role of the human self in creation. In the traditional in the traditional perspective, nature, aspects of which were recreated by the Greeks, and the self as mirror, recreated by the Chinese, are both reflections of the one God self-disclosure in the divine name creator. Do you want me to continue?
Yeah, continue maybe this whole up to traditional psychology. Yeah, the next page up to here. Then we will review what it said and how we understood it. And then I'll request Mona to read the next part. So that's how initially I wanted to go. And then we will come to introduce other materials. Yeah.
Okay, I'll continue.
Yeah.
So let's see. The connection between nature and the self is seen not to be in matter or physical form, but in the creative process itself. This creative process is known as nature in its mode of operation. Nature in its mode of operation is the means by which the divine presence in creation continues. Creation is not considered to have been a one time Big Bang from which God then retired from the universe, but an ongoing process of recreation. With every expansion, contraction, with every breathing out and breathing in, all of nature, including the human self, dies and is reborn through the creative act. This death and rebirth occurs through divine guidance, the second most important divine name for traditional psychology being Al Hadi, the guide. This divine guidance, which guides nature in its mode of operation, has established a means of communications between the creator and the self, which consists of signs. We, God the creator, shall show them, human beings, our signs upon the horizon, universe, and within themselves, the self, until it is clear to them, human beings, that He, God, is the real Hak. When the human being becomes conscious of self and then freely chooses to learn to read and to live by the signs without and within, God's will is done. Such a person will have completed the perfection of nature in its mode of operation within the self, will be centered, having gained experiential knowledge of the oneness of God, monotheism, Tawheed, reflected in nature and within themselves.
Thank you. Thank you. That's wonderful reading. So what we found is basically this example of the Greek Chinese story, and of course that is basically as some kind of models, and he mentioned that our self is the mirror. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
self is seen. um, so the self is seen to be not in the matter or physical form, but in the creative process itself. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and she was saying that the self as the mirror, and the both reflections of the one God's self-disclosure in the divine names creator. So basically the universe we are in, the nature, is nothing but God's constant creation. It's the mm, so it's basically an window God's to disclose himself. It's basically the television screen where all the images are coming, and we are the one who are watching it there. Of course, God himself is watching it, and we are all part of that drama or theater, whatever Shakespeare calls it, right? So we are part of the divine comedy, and the way that Italian philosopher divine comedy was written, right?
Mhm.
So this understanding that Yahadi, that name, gives guidance in divine act, and of course all participants who are participating in that creation, he shows them signs, and those signs are visible in the horizon and as well as within ourselves, and that is the process continuously happening, and we are not separate from God. God is within us and outside us. And when creation happens, we are part of that co-creation. That's the understanding. And main part he's talking about is this this relationship. mm, There is a unity of three separate relationships: the self and God, self and nature, and the self and the self. Those are the three different relationship we have, and that particular information which I just read, that self, those three relationship is mentioned here. Three separate relationship: um, self and God, and self and the nature, which includes human being, and self and the self. So that is the thing we have here. Um, this monotheistic worldview, the universal unity. So, um, any question from there, what we read?
Let's see.
It's clear, right?
No, I don't have any. Yes, thank you.
Okay, that's good, Mona. So now, would you mind reading the next part, this traditional psychology?
Of course not. So traditional psychology, science of God in nature, which includes all the universe from the largest galaxy of stars in the planets to the smallest living organism on Earth, are both external to the human being and internal. Knowledge of external science.
Come back to that diagram. Yeah. So knowledge of external science that forms that forms the subject of the various natural sciences. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Forms the subject of the various natural sciences the human being has developed to understand the divine creation like cosmology, astronomy, philosophy, biology, chemistry, and so forth, as well as the science of revelation, gaining knowledge about the Qur'an, where the 6,000 some verses are each called a sign, ayah. Understanding of science within develops through the natural sciences, the branch known as medicine and philosophy, and the branch known as practical philosophy. From the 13th century to the present in the Muslim world, the latter science has included three branches: the science of ethics, the science of economics, including home economics, and the science of politics. Traditional psychology is found in the science of ethics and can therefore most clearly be referred to as psychoethics. In order to develop a fair evaluation of psychoethics in general and its personality paradigm in particular, it's necessary to understand its perspective on the human being's place in the universe, a perspective which is both holistic and integrative.
Okay,
The
so
covenant.
now let's look at this diagram. So this diagram is related to that classification you just have read. So as you see here, yeah, philosophical science and the non-philosophical science, and then early, a while, the second classification of science. So there is a first classification of science and second classification of science. First classification is philosophical science and non-philosophical science. And second classification of science is a while, early versus late. So in this philosophical science, it has one is theoretical, another is practical, and then of course the theoretical part itself, both those are subclassified as metaphysics, supreme science, mathematics, intermediate science, natural philosophy, lower science, and then it says pertaining to the individual, which is ethics, and pertaining to the collective, which is economics and politics. So that's one classification. And over here, non-religious and religious, and then religious one, it says intellectual and transmitted. So that's one category, first classification of science. And second classification of science saying that a while the early class includes practical philosophy, including ethics, politics, economics, theoretical philosophy, including logic, prime philosophy, metaphysics, science, and then principles of mathematics, including arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music, and branches of natural philosophy, including medicine, alchemy, natural magics, etc. And then branches of mathematics, including all branches of astronomy, mathematical geography, mechanical device, etc. And the later Awakhir includes literature, science, divine law, Sufism, sciences of daily discourse. So this particular chart has been taken from the book called Classification of Sciences. It was done by Amuli. Amuli is one of the 15th century philosopher of Iran. It has been quoted by Sayyid Hussain Nazar in his book Islamic Science and Illustrated Study. So yeah, that's what we just have read in this particular paragraphs, the traditional psychology. So any question in there, the traditional psychology, where it falls? And she's basically saying that this psychoethics, the one we are talking about, it is part of the practical philosophy, which is pertaining to individual development. And so that's what she's trying to tell us, that we are part of the universe. The universe comprises of all those knowledge and science, but we cannot work on our own unless we understand the whole picture. Yeah. Any questions on those two part we have read, Katina and Mona? Any question?
It's clear so far.
Very good. Well done.
Yeah, I was gonna. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So now we'll go into this covenant between self and God. So Katina, do you want to read that part? Because that is the one, yeah, she is leading us to, because this is an overview of the whole diagram. She's giving us the perspective and the how it is connected to the universe. So in that way, yeah, let's proceed with the covenant, because that's where we started. Because yeah, go for it. Do you need a bit
Sure.
bigger or?
Um,
Okay.
oh no, it's good.
Okay, that's
The covenant between self and God, as as the last creation of nature's creator, the human being occupies a special place in nature because out of all of nature, God breathes his spirit within the human self alone. It is this infusion of the divine spirit which allows the human self to become conscious of self, an advantage no other aspect of nature has. Therefore, even though all of nature, the universe, and the cosmos are divinely created from the combination of natural elements and their qualities, only the human form has consciousness of self. In the traditional perspective, this gift of consciousness was granted to the potential human spirit when it accepted the trust of the heavens and the earth. We offer the trust to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, but they refused to carry it and were afraid of it, and the human being carried it. Surah 33, Ayat 72. The acceptance of the trust includes the covenant with the Lord, Rab, as the Quran says, and when your Lord took the seed of the children of Adam from their loins and asked, am I not your Lord? And they bore witness, yea, we do bear witness, so that they not respond on the day of judgment by saying, we were unaware of this. Surah 7, Ayat 173. Through this covenant, the human being becomes the trustee or representative of God on earth, accepts the trust of nature, and psychoethics is born.
beautiful. So this is how she's relating how the total science includes, um, psychoethics, and then he's saying that when psychoethics was born. So it's basically before this whole universe was created, psychoethics was born. Our in Alome Arwah. So I'll explain 5 presences where Alome Arwah is, where we came from, and where we will go back. We briefly touch on it, but here he's saying that in that primordial time, we have a covenant with God. Ourself, the self, and God had a covenant. So the contract, and that contract was with this trust, the acceptance of the trust, and as a result, we became a trustee. And that's a beautiful introduction, right? The gift of consciousness was given, and that is the gift we have been trusted with, because nothing or no one in this whole universe have that gift of consciousness, right? That gift of consciousness, um, not only I am conscious of my own self, I'm conscious of the whole universe, including God. So basically that consciousness is the God consciousness, right? And and that is the trust we have been given. So any question on this?
No, I just have a comment that when I first read this, it was so beautiful because, you know, I grew up Christian, so this is definitely not our creation story at all. So I just thought it was such a beautiful explanation as to kind of the beginning of it all.
Yes, yes. So I'll introduce at this point a brief. Oh, okay. So there is a. How come I raised my hand here? Okay, I'll look into that later. Um, so maybe I just have to go and check how to raise, lower the hand. Okay, because somehow it got started there. So what actually I wanted to share at this point is there is a diagram of multiple layer, the five presence, and this is an Ibn Arabi um, diagram. It started in this article by five divine presences from Al-Kunawi to Al-Kaisari. There's an article which I'll post it into the chat, and this is written by William Shittick. So there, this diagram is what I wanted to mention briefly, because now that we have gone into this realm of arwah, alam arwah. So in alam arwah, there are entities, and these entities is a manifest to God alone, manifest to both God and to others. And God alone has two presence. One is complete negation of entities, exclusive unity, gaib al mutlak, and the another is the negation from outward existence, but not from knowledge. So this is the wahdaniya, this is the presence God created. So this is where it's the light of Muhammad has been created, and then manifest to both God and the others. And this is the one non-composite world of spirits. This is where our covenant meeting happened, because um, Ruh, all Ruh was gathered in this gathering where that covenant took place. And then this is the subtle world, was the world of imagination, or is called Alam al Mithal, image examples. That is the fourth presence. And then the composite, the gross, which is the world of corporeal bodies, which is our lower world. So this is the world where we are in now. But this perfect man, who is the Insan Kamil, he has a visibility to all of this presence. All of those five presences is visible to the person who achieve this Kamaliyat, perfection. So this model is written by Al-Faragani. He is one of the um, follower of Ibn Arabi, who actually yeah, drawn this diagram. But there are many other diagram which we can introduce later. But at this stage, I just wanted to refer to this um, before we go back to our reading. So I'll come back to our reading. Um, so we'll go back to it. Seeking divine assistance. Okay, I'll read this time and then I'll go back to give it back to Mona. Yeah. Seeking divine assistance in order to carry out the duties of trusteeship. Divine assistance is sought. It is always available if sought. As the sign says that God turns to those who turn to him. And Al-Ghazali um, goes so far as to say that without divine assistance, there is no conscious communication between the creator and the trustee. In other words, without consciousness of self, communications of the regulations of the trust remains indirect and preconscious or even perhaps unconscious. Al-Ghazali defines divine assistance as the harmony, agreement, or concord of the self's will and action with God's will. It appears as a sign that is the grace of God, a free gift which he gives to whom he wills. Surah number 5 and ayat number 54, and consists of 4 stages: guidance from God, hidayah, directions, rushd, leading, tajdeed, and then confirmation, ta'id, guidance from God, is of 2 types: guidance through nature, taqween, and guidance through nurture, tashri'. The sign God gave into everything its nature, further gave it guidance. Surah 20, ayat 50. Perspective, according to the traditional perspective, just move this screen. Okay. Indicates God as the creator and the guide of all nature. Guidance is of 2 types, as previously stated. The first is taqwini, or primordial, universal guidance, which all of nature receives, human or otherwise, as a part of the fitra, or natural disposition. Universal guidance regulates whatever is created in nature through a natural and reflective process to implementing God's will. There's a diagram there. Creator, he gives a signs, and then guidance, 2 types of guidance: nature, nurture, nature, creation, the guidance to the creation, and then nurture, revelation. So revelation gives us Sharia, Tashri'i guidance, and Tagwini guidance. So 2 types of guidance are given, and then that guidance is reflected in the mirror of self. So, and the self and the guidance by the sign of nature, nurture, Tagwin, Tashri'i guidance. The self is capable of reflecting the oneness of God's self-disclosure in nature, in its mode of operation, is the universal macrocosm within the self macrocosm. So, and this is where I'll show another diagram how microcosm and macrocosm are all enveloped. So that's where I'll show the other diagram. But at this stage, just finish this reading. So here, the unreflective process implementing God's will. Al-Ghazali expands on this type of guidance by saying he guides the young bird to pick up seeds from the time of its hatching. He guides the bee to build its house in hexagonal form. And then he said human nature in the traditional perspective holds within itself all that came before it in creation, not in material terms, but in terms of nature in its mode of operation, which is part of Takvini guidance. Mineral, plant, animal, and human souls each contribute to a part of the development and perfection of nature's mode of operation. Um, Minerals contributes preservation of the forms of the four elements: earth, air, fire, water, and their properties, and cold and dry, hot and wet, hot and dry, cold and wet, respectively. The plant soul contributes the ability to assimilate food, to grow, and to reproduce, and the animal soul contributes perception and motivation. So at the time, the evolution of the human soul or self nature in its mode of operation was completed with what is known as the infusion of divine spirit. This became the human self, which was given a uniquely original gift, as had each of the other stages of nature evolution received. Let me move this outside so that I can read it. So let me read it again. This became the human self, which was given a uniquely original gift, as had each of other stages, a stage of nature's evolution received, but for the self, the last offspring of creation, the gift was that of capacity for consciousness as part of its natural disposition, a gift that it shares only with the Creator because of the covenant it made with God and the acceptance of the trust of nature. So do you have any question on this particular three paragraph I have read? Looks like it's quite long
So I have a
section.
question.
Yes, go for it.
Yeah,
Go for it.
I have a question.
Yes, go
Um,
for it.
Actually, I have two questions. So if we go back to the diagram, that's, the creator goes into the signs, that one, on page 6. When it talks about kind of the nature and creation, all of that, can we put in there, those are like the universal laws? Would
Yes,
that be
those are,
included in that, like takwini?
yes, the universal law. Just like, say, for example, fire, the job of fire is to burn. So it has a built-in divine law into that element, right? And the water, it takes the shape of the its container. So that is nature. So everything has its own religion, right? The way
Hmm.
we um,
Okay.
we understand objects, we understand anything material and non-material, stone versus plant versus minerals. Everything has its nature and it has a divine law built in. Fitra, the word
Yes.
he
Okay.
she used is called fitra. Have you noticed that terminology she used? Because there is a
Yes.
verse
Yes.
in
Hmm.
Quran. Um, in Quran it says in Surah Ibrahim, says Fitratullah allati fatara nasa. Mani, he created this fitratullah, the disposition of Allah, the nature of Allah, and then fatara nasa, he created, instilled into human being, um, la tabdila, you cannot change, you should not change. That's what that ayat is. So I will find that ayat and read it to you briefly. It's in Surah Ibrahim. So that is a very beautiful verse to reflect, and that has this particular description of this fitra, where that fitra coming from? Fitra is built in.
Okay, thank you for that. And then the other question I had was on page 7, she starts to talk about the properties of like cold and dry and hot and wet. And that reminds me of like in the Unami Tibbs, how this describes like the constitutions of different people. Actually,
Uh,
not even just people, but different properties of pretty much everything, like food, humans, Um, so I guess my question was, I think I might have even answered my own question. I guess my question was like Unami Tibbs like pretty much based off of all of this? I feel like some of this is like definitely related to medicine, but not in the conventional sense.
so, um, what is the question exactly?
Well, I guess I was wondering because it's describing kind of the properties of everything. And I'm thinking of like Unami Tibbs and like kind of the different like healing. So I guess my question was, and I said, I think I answered it though. I think my question was pretty much most of the systems that we have, in healing medicine seem to have been based off like kind of almost like this is the beginning of that science, which kind of takes us back to the diagram. Let me see. On page 3, where she talks about the classifications of the sciences.
Okay, okay, yeah. I'll come back to it. I'll just quote this ayat fitratullah, this particular word, fitratullah, allati fatara nasa alayha, la tabdila li khalqillah. So this is the part I wanted to mention. Is saying that um, here turning away from all that is false in accordance with the natural disposition. Here that fitratullah is translated as a natural disposition which God has instilled into man. So this is the one you are referring to. Anything we take to heal us as a medicine, that is given to us in his creation. So if we have any disease, it has a remedy inside the nature. So that's what it is. It said, Fitratullah allati fatara nasa alayha. And then it says, uh, not to allow any change to corrupt what has God has created. That is the thing is saying that la tabdila li khalqillah. And then of course talking about rest of the thing related to religion and other aspects of the ayah, but main idea I wanted to refer to was this particular verse. So I go back to that reading. um, yeah, so what your question you have answered. Is there any other question you wanted to mention?
Oh, that's it. Thanks.
Okay. So Hidayah, so he's saying the 4 stages, guidance come into 4 stages. Guidance from God, Hidayah, and then it can be, um, he mentioned here that guidance, he said without guidance, you cannot heal yourself. The self we wanted to purify, you cannot purify. You cannot get rid of lust. You cannot get rid of greed. Cannot get rid of anger. You cannot get rid of any negative trait. You want to purify your heart unless God's assistance is there. And that assistance comes in 4 forms. One is Hidayah, guidance. Another is Rushd, Khulafai Rashidun, the directed or rightly guided. So you will need a Rushd, which will come through your intuition, through your book or whatever. And then another one is this Tashdid, leading. So it can come from a sheikh who is leading me, or it can come from my own self, which can give me this particular guidance and idea. And then the confirmation, which is ta'eed, that is also can come in various forms. She will explain those, saying that guidance from God is of 2 types: guidance of nature, takwini, and guidance through nurture, which is tashri'i, which is sharia. So those are the things we needed to remind ourselves at this moment, as in our journey, when we look for solution of any negative trait we want to clean our heart. That is the one we will focus on. So let's keep reading the rest. Yeah, Mona, you have
Sorry, I have a question here.
okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. So when it comes like to differentiating the different types of guidance that one can receive on the spiritual journey, so how do we differentiate whether it's coming that guidance, that inspiration or intuitive thought that comes to the mind? How do we know whether it's coming from the ego self, from the lower self, or if it's coming from God or the other types of guidance that we've just been talking about? How do we differentiate between this?
Yeah, Ibn Arabi actually explains it in that Sufi path of knowledge, which is basically an excerpt of Ibn Arabi's Futuhat al-Makkiyah. There he explained various types of thoughts which comes to our door of heart. So he's saying that if a particular thought contradicts Quran and Hadith, then we reject it. But if it doesn't contradict, we accept it and act accordingly. So, and of course, when time comes, we'll refer to that section. And I think she will take us to that kind of section. I think I saw somewhere. But that is the guidance. Basically, when a thought, intuitive thought comes to you, you need to know, is it from your ego self or it is from your higher self? Because we have 2 self. One is Nusutiya, which is a human nature. Another is Lahutiya, which is divine nature. So divine nature has to have governing power, and human nature has to have a subservient power. So, but ego self is part of that self which needed to be subservient to the divine self. So divine self need to make this discernment. Discernment is another quality to nourish. Through that discernment, we have to see this particular thought, if it come to me to do something, say that it is beneficial, but behind that benefit, there is a hidden shaitanic agenda. So that's what we needed to understand, whether we should act on it or not act on it. Main parameter is this revelation, this nurturing tashri'i. It will have a guidance on it. So that's what we need to consult. When we find that my heart is telling me to go to a place where all these glittering things are, and then that glittering things has a trap for me, for my soul, which I am not aware, but because divine book asked us not to go there, we need to listen to divine book as opposed to my own self.
I'm sorry, can I ask a bit further about this?
Yeah, yes, go ahead,
I
go
find
ahead.
it very, very
Go ahead.
pertinent, especially when making decisions that could, based on this. So, like there is in the Quran, in Surah Al-Kahf, there are two verses. The last, I think it's verse 105 and 6, in which Allah says, قُلْ هَلْ نُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِالْأَخْسَرِينَ أَعْمَالًا. So say, O Prophet, shall we inform you of who will be the biggest losers of deeds? They are those whose efforts are in vain. Sorry, I'm trying to find the verse. Yes.
What is the
those
verse
whose
number?
efforts are
What
in
is the
vain.
verse number? If you want, then I can bring it on the
Verse
screen.
100.
Surah number?
Verse 103 and Surah Al-Kahf, verse 103 and 104.
Surah Kahf, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Verse 103. Okay. I think this site is useless. Kul hal nunabbiukum bil akhsarina amala, yeah?
Yes, please.
Okay.
الذين ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا. There are those whose efforts are in vain in this worldly life while they think they're doing good. And the self, like being so subtle in creatures, like it has a way of justifying, even when we're referring to the Quran in Hadith, like it has a way of justifying what it does to itself. And sometimes it's not even something glamorous or glittery that's attractive, but it could also be something subtle, like even if you think like you're giving up on good things, doing something that could look heroic, or that could look something that could make you look like you're losing material things, but that could also be egoic in a sense, that you can say, oh look, I've done this, I've given up on something that everybody, but then that could also be a form of egoic inspiration, if that makes sense. So
yes,
that's
yes.
what yes.
So of course this is a contextual particular examples which may be because if sometime our soul come with Quranic argument and in the book, Ibn Arabi's book, it's called Ruhul Quds. There he was talking to his soul and he was arguing with him about this particular aspect of the soul can say that, hey, Abu Bakr was Siddiq, God had given him a Siddiqui soul. That soul has a special feature which you are not given. So you cannot be as same level of Siddiq as Abu Bakr. And also he was giving example of he said that, okay, there is a two person, one is Halaj, another is Wais Qarni. Halaj was fasting for 7 days and then he was so hungry and he got some food and he was about to eat. Suddenly a beggar came He said that, hey, I have been not, I am hungry for 8 days. So Halaj gave his whole food to him, and there was a similar event happened with Vice Coroni, and Vice Coroni took a bite from the food and then gave the rest to the beggar. So now which one is more liked by divine? And Ibn Arabi explained that it is Vice Coroni who has the higher rank, because Vice Coroni was able to give same level of um, uh, justice to his own soul and the soul which
Mhm.
came to ask for the food. So because but Halaj did injustice to his soul, because he gave preference to the other soul. He did
Mhm.
deprived his own self, because to Allah
Mhm.
both self was created at the same level. So because Weisskopf understood that both self has the equal power, so he gave a little share to his soul. And so, but from outside, it may look that Halaj did the good thing because he sacrificed.
Mhm.
So, right? So there's a
Yes.
similar kind of argument. Even Shaitan can play. I don't know. I was referring to this little book called All That Is Needed. What the seeker needs. This kitab is called Al Kunhu. So in that kitab, the Al Kunhu Mala Buddha Lil Murid Minho, here what happens is Shaitan is saying, keep doing all the sin. Um, if you don't do the sin, to whom God will apply his forgiveness, his quality. So
Mhm.
someone need to
Mhm.
do the sin so that God can forgive him. If you don't do
Mhm.
sin,
Mhm.
who will he will forgive? So he said that, okay, um, so that means then Ibrahim will be saying, are you that soul who want to challenge God, that prove to me that you are forgiving and merciful to me by
Mhm.
forgiving me, and that's why I will keep doing all this sin? Do you think you have that right to test your own Lord? You got my point?
Mhm.
So sometimes soul
Yes.
can
Yes.
ask that kind of question. Say that if you don't do sin, who is he is going to do show his mercy to? So as a result, test your God first, that you prove to me that you are merciful by forgiving me, and then I'll do all the good deeds. Right? So those kind of argument
Mhm.
can happen. So here you're saying Allazina Dolla, those
Mhm.
labor has gone astray, sayuhum fil hayati dunya, in the pursuit of no more than this world's life, and and then wahum yahsabuna annahum yusinuna sun'a, mm, who none the less think that they are doing good deeds. And that's what mirage is. That's what, you know, the people in Palestine versus the other party, they think that they
Mhm.
have their book says that you everybody is Amalek. So that's what
Mhm.
in their mind they are doing good deed. They are not feeling guilt at all
Mhm.
to kill all these people, because they
Mhm.
think they are doing yuhsinun, because it's a sunnah, it's a made up good deeds. It appear to them
Mhm.
like a good
Mhm.
deeds. So this is another veil
Yes.
God puts onto their heart, because they can't see this, that they are in Dalla, they are in the Dwalin, they are in Tadlil. Eh? So
Yes.
that is another veil God can create.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yes.
so
It's yes. Especially the analogy that you brought between Al-Hallaj and the other persons. I couldn't remember his name, the other Wali, but that perfectly answers
yeah,
lots
yeah,
of questions I had about.
yeah. That's
So
true.
thank you.
That's good then. That's good. Okay, and now we'll go into this page. Um, So let me share the screen. Um, so we were reading, um, up to motivation here. Did we read page 7 full? Minerals, human nature in the traditional perspective. So here, so Mona, you can read from here. At the time of evolution of human soul.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. At the time of the evolution of the human soul or self, nature in its mode of operation was completed with what is known as the infusion of the divine spirit. This became the human self, which was given a uniquely original gift, as had each of the other stages of nature's evolution received. But for the self, the last offspring of creation, the gift was that of the capacity for consciousness as part of its natural disposition. A gift that it shares only with the Creator because of the covenant it made with God and the acceptance of the trust of nature. The second type of both internal and external guidance is tashri'i, or acquired guidance, referring to guidance through the commands of revelation. It's rational in orientation and therefore the spatial guidance of the human being alone. If accepted as guidance in the perspective of submission to the will of God, Islam, acquired guidance becomes yet another gift to one who actually does submit to the will of God, Muslim. It is a particular kind of guidance, in a sense, because it speaks to human consciousness. It is to elucidate this kind of guidance that God sends prophets and the divine law as reinforcement against. Sorry, if you could.
Which one?
Yes. No, sorry, if you could lower it a little bit.
Oh, okay.
I cannot. Yeah. It's a particular kind of guidance, in a sense, because it speaks to human consciousness. It is to elucidate this kind of guidance that God sends prophets and the divine law as reinforcement against the forgetful and negligent human beings declaring on the day of judgment, "We were unaware of this." Qur'an 7, verse 173. Guidance acquired through revelation at the stage of divine grace or assistance is considered to be a free gift from God because the giving was not obligatory on his part. However, the great theologian and philosopher Al-Ghazali makes an important distinction here. God's
communication. Yeah.
God's communication through revelation, by which the self can acquire guidance, helps the self know the positive traits of its divinely bestowed natural disposition, but does not make the self actualize them through practices. The self is free to make the choice to follow tashri'i guidance or not to do so. If this guidance is not so chosen, the self will still be guided by takwini guidance, just as the rest of nature is. However, mineral, plant, and other animal forms have no choice, no free will, so they submit completely to his will in completing their stage of perfection of nature in its mode of operation. A natural being that has consciousness which relies solely on takwini guidance will not succeed in submitting to the will of God and completing the perfection of nature in its mode of operation, because without the tashri'i guidance of revelation, there will be no strengthening of free will through divine assistance of direction, leading, and confirmation. These forms of divine assistance, along with guidance from God, strengthen the will of the self so that it gains greater conformity to God's will. Without divine assistance, choices will be made whereby one's mineral, plant, and animal nature will be strengthened as opposed to free will, following the advice of reason. In other words, without the guidance of the prophets and the divine law, which are part of revelation, the self will live by guidance through creation alone, never learning to be able to achieve its full potential and never completing the perfection of nature in its mode of operation which God so willed when He infused the Spirit into the human form. Tashri'i guidance enhances the natural disposition of human conscience and power of discernment to know the difference between positive and negative dispositions. It also helps the human being regulate the state of the self at every level of change and transformation towards completing the perfection of nature in its mode of operation at its highest level. Al-Ghazali refers to the sign, but to those who follow Tashri'i guidance, he increases their guidance and bestows on them piety. Qur'an 47, verse 17. Nasruddin Tusi, died in 1201, explains how guidance comes either through nature or discipline. An example of nature is the principle okay, sorry.
Yeah, so he gave an example. Come back to the example, but is there anything that we picked up in this particular reading?
If we could go up one page higher, instance apart.
Page 7?
I think it's page 7, yes.
Okay.
Is it one page lower, please?
One
There's
page
a part which...
over there? Human nature?
When they were talking about if the... I think it's on page 8, I'm really sorry.
Is earlier or later? What is it about?
Page 8. It
Page
was
8.
about when, yes, the individual or the person, when they don't follow the tashri'i, the self is free to make the choice to follow the choice guidance or not to. So if this guide, yes, if the person doesn't choose the tashri'i guidance, the self would still be guided by takwini guidance, just as the rest of nature is. But is there a consequence to this, like choosing not to follow the tashri'i guidance? Does the self fall back into a more negative mode of operation, like?
Yeah, the self is free to make the choice to follow Tashri'i guidance or not to do so, right? So the self has that choice. That's what she's saying, right? The self can, the self is free to make the choice to follow Tashri'i guidance or not to do so. If this guidance is not so chosen, the self will still be guided by Takwini guidance, just as the rest of the nature is. However, mineral, plant, and other animals forms have no choice, no free will, so they submit completely to his will in completing their stage of perfection of nature in its mode of operation. So here it's saying that if as a human being I have been given my hand, my leg, my feet, those are in my command, right? I can take them wherever I go. So if my hand do all the bad deeds, at the moment my hand has no power. But on the day of judgment, it will talk against me. He said that I was used against my will. But you will find that though my hands, my body couldn't do anything, after killing the man, I can't sleep because it bring back the thought that I did an injustice. So my conscience, my my inner self bring that thought back to me. That's why a lot of people, after doing the crime, they are burned by their own fire. So that's what is the case. But of course, whether we follow Tashri guidance or not, at this stage, yes, we are allowed to do it. But that's why this day of judgment is. That's why, of
Um,
course, that sometime God punish us here, sometime will punish, or we have to pay our price over there.
yes. I'm sorry. I think my question is, is Takwini guidance and the fitra, because Katina was mentioning earlier about universal law. So is that the
Yes.
Tashri'i guidance or the Takwini?
Yeah, Takviri guidance is the one which is universal law. That
That's the
they say that,
fitra.
yeah, that's the fitra. That is the one. Sometime we will get punishment in this world. We see it. Sometimes we see the punishment. For example, we have seen that Pharaoh was given the justice in this world because he
Okay.
he he was um, yeah, he was actually drowned into death, and his body has been kept intact for the whole humanity to see for for centuries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas many other were not, say Karun or Namrud or everybody, many of them were dead, and they will be
Mm-hmm.
punished and purified in the hellfire.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank
So
you. Yes, what I was trying, I guess what I was trying to understand is like if one falls back to their fitra, to their to the guidance of their fitra, when they don't even have access to the Sharia guidance, is that the Sharia guidance based of the
yes, it's a
Sharia?
Sharia
Or
guidance. It's a Sharia guidance,
yes.
but sometimes you remember Tashri'i guidance is his external guidance, but he went
Mm-hmm.
to kill a person, but he couldn't kill because his heart
Mm-hmm.
started beating, and he found that his
Mm-hmm.
hand is not moving anymore because he
Mm-hmm.
realized that he is doing an injustice. It happened to many people, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes, that's what I was trying to, I guess, to understand, because not everyone has, but then it says if they choose not to follow. So this must be for people who already have access to that knowledge of the Teshri guidance, or who, yeah. I was thinking like if everyone follows their fitra, because I think we all know based on the fitra, like the Takwini guidance, what's right and what's not right. And I was thinking like if one falls back to that and use that as their guidance when they don't have access to the Teshri guidance, would the self still be guided? That's what I was trying to get to, but I think that kind of answers my question.
Yeah,
Sorry.
of course, if I was never exposed to Sharia,
Mm-hmm.
I still will have a common sense what is right and what
Mm-hmm.
is wrong. So
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
that's how God taught us. You remember that story of
Mm-hmm.
Habil and Kabil, the Abel and Cain.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so the bad son killed the good son, but bad son want to now bury, but he doesn't know how to bury. And then and a
Mm-hmm.
crow came to teach him, right? That
Mm-hmm.
the crow, he saw in front of him that the crow was digging the earth and buried the dead crow, another bird. So then he learned from the nature. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the
Yes.
story.
Yes.
Is a kind of takvini, right? Guidance.
Yes. That's right.
Yeah. So that's an
Thank
example.
you.
That's how he learned it. He didn't read anywhere. Also, Adam might have told him, which is his Sharia, but he
Mm-hmm.
didn't have this clue about how to deal with the dead body. That's the Sharia he was not told. So,
Mm-hmm.
but nature taught him.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we came almost to the end of our time. We didn't finish it. And also, I didn't go into showing any other diagram. So what do you think? Do you want to continue for another 5-10 minutes, or and then finish this section? This table, especially this example.
I think we can do that unless it's
Katina? Yeah, should we finish this
Yeah, I
example?
think to finish.
Okay,
Yeah, I
okay,
think
that'll
to
do.
finish it.
Okay, so go ahead, Mona, since you have read this, if you can read this little bit as well, and then we'll go through this table, which is basically a repeat of what we have been talking about.
okay. An example of nature is the principle which moves the passage of the sperm through the degrees of transformations to the point where it reaches the perfection of an animal. An example of discipline is the principle which moves wood by means of tools and instruments to the point where it reaches the perfection of a couch. Since the perfection of anything lies in the assimilation of that thing to its own principle, so the perfection of discipline, regulated by tashri'i guidance, lies in its assimilation to nature, takwini guidance. Its assimilation to nature means that it follows nature in the advancement or the relegation of causes, in putting everything in its place, and in the observance of gradation and classification, so that the perfection towards which divine omnipotence has directed nature by way of subjection may be realized from discipline by way of regulation.
Okay, so he gave an example. Yeah, Tashri'i guidance. Yeah, yeah, you can read the table.
It's okay, sorry.
Yeah, the perfection of discipline being regulated by Tashri'i guidance lies in its assimilation to nature and follows nature in order to advance its causes, puts everything in its place, observes gradation of nature. So those are the three things part of the Takwini guidance, and he gave an example of discipline, the principle which moves wood by means of tools and instruments to the point where it reaches the perfection of a couch. So to make a couch, you needed to use tools and instruments to make the wood as a furniture or as a couch, right? So we basically assimilated um, the natural things to bring a new thing which is useful to us. So at this stage, he's talking about Takmini guidance, which is basically divine guidance built into the nature. And in addition to guidance from God in both its Takvini and Tashri'i forms, divine assistance contains three other previously alluded to stages, namely direction, rushd, leading, tashdid, and the confirmation ta'id. Direction, rushd corresponds to divine names, which Rashid means one who gives direction to all people in proportion to their acceptance, tashri'i guidance, and then the sign. And we verily gave Abraham of old his direction, and we are aware of him, and then supports this stage of divine assistance, which is present when the self senses it is being directed towards Tashri'i guidance. So when the self is aware of the fact that its will and actions together are directed to the right goal, the actions are made easier so that it achieves its goal in the shortest time possible. And this is the third stage referred to by Al-Ghazali as leading, tasdeed. And final stage of divine assistance is confirmation, ta'id, which is referred to by the sign, how I confirmed you with the spirit. which is present in the self when the insight is strengthened inwardly, while outwardly suitable conditions are provided within the means available to attain the goal. And then the last paragraph is the self is guided through Tashrihi guidance to various methods available to its prepare um, um, to it to prepare itself as a part of its trust to receive divine assistance. The methods are among the signs in the form of commands, which are classified by Al-Ghazali according to the type of relationship the command refers. Al-Ghazali uh, mentions two types of relationships for the trustee of nature as representative of God on earth to establish. First, the relationship between self and its creator guide, and the second, the relationship between self and one's fellow human beings. So basically he's saying that God's guidance come through nature and God's guidance come through the Sharia. So, and he gave examples of how he guided Abraham, and he gave examples how things happened in terms of our own self, and he just used this table, which is Nasiruddin Tusi actually drawn this table. That's what he's quoting from. So it's what it says is basically when we are seeking guidance, we just look into both sources of guidance, right? Two types of relationships for the trustee of nature as representative of God on earth to establish. First is the relationship between its self and its creator guide. Second is the relationship between the self and its fellow human beings. So any question, Katina?
No, thank you.
Okay, so in that case, we've finished at least this part of overview, where we are now learning as a part of our self renewal. We will be guided by Sharia and divine built-in natural guidance. Later, he will actually explain to us how knowledge, actions, and also he will explain from prophetic hadith. He has 30 obligations on all believers towards their brothers and sisters. So there is a section here where he quoted this particular table, 30 obligations on all believers towards brothers and sisters, and she will draw some behavioral learning from that table, and then she will guide us how our psychoethics needed to be applied. So, and how we needed to have our own rule book for the self. Yeah, I'll send some other rule book which is relevant to this in our next session. I'll share that. But at this stage, I didn't go into This diagram, I thought this cosmology will share, but in our next session, we'll share it. So many thanks for joining these 90 minutes. Really, it's wonderful. And I'm glad that we continued, though other couldn't join us. So many thanks. Hopefully our self-development and our this striving, the Jihad Akbar, will continue. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yeah?
Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah
Thank
khair.
you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much.
The Hafiz.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.